What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I'm looking ahead to the world in European MMA over the weekend because there's a lot going on. And usually I'd have my my preview or my couple of previews, but we had to stack them this week. We had to stack them. And let me tell you what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to be talking about the main events of the three big events going on this weekend and a couple of fights under that as well. So first of all, we have Oktagon 68, which goes down on March 8 in Stuttgart, Germany. Then we have Oktagon 104, which is also on March 8, which is on in Poland. And then we have Cage Warriors 183, which, you guessed it, March 8 on over in Rome, a place that's been, massive for Cage Warriors over the last few years. So these three cards are very, very, very interesting with some good fights throughout them. And it'd be remiss of me, I suppose, not to start with a little bit of a chat about that. Like, the battle for Europe is most certainly on. A couple of weeks ago, we had KSW and Oktagon both running in the same country, in the Czech Republic, at the same on the same weekend. Obviously, the two of them, along with Cage Warriors, are running this weekend. And the next two Oktagon events after this, the next two KSW events that are scheduled after this, there's Oktagon events also on the same weekends, on the same night, I believe, as both of those. Now, there's a few more events to be added in the middle of those as well, but go with me here for a second. The announced ones are all clashing. So, right, you could say that's, maybe that's just the way it falls. Maybe they're just the best weekends for MMA or whatever, but I don't know, do I necessarily buy that at all, to be honest. Now, the Cage Warriors part of it, I think maybe the Cage Warriors one is just a coincidence for this one. And Cage Warriors are kind of starting their year around now and will be running more shows, so they're bound to clash with other events, and Oktagon running a lot of shows as well. But I don't think it's a coincidence between Oktagon and KSW, especially when they KSW were running a show in Liberec and announced it the day before the Oktagon show in Liberec in the Czech Republic. It's a very, very interesting time. Plus, we have PFL Europe, I'm sure, which will be coming back pretty soon. I heard rumors of clashing cards with them as well, but we'll see, I suppose, how that works out over the next couple of months. So I think these three, along with PFL Europe, along with Aries and a few more as well. I know Hexagon, actually, they have an event this weekend as well, and I see Norbert Navinia is over at it now. I don't know whether he'll be signing for them or not, but I think they're over in Bulgaria, if I'm not mistaken. If he was, that would be a massive signing, but I doubt it highly. But it's a very, very interesting time for European MMA. Like, I think everyone knows now the strength of European MMA at the moment. Like, look what has happened in the UFC and at the top level over the last few years with Merab going in there, becoming champion, Topuria becoming champion, and obviously then we have a lot of the Russian fighters as well doing what they've been doing in all the different promotions throughout the last decade. It's really a crazy time for European MMA, and we've seen people coming from all of these. I know Oktagon are obviously a little bit newer, but we've seen people coming from all of these places and going over having great careers, like Gamrot or Soldic, or people like Paddy Pimblett at the moment, and Oban Elliott finding their way through in the UFC after coming from Cage Warriors, and Paul Hughes and Ian Gary and all of that. So massive opportunities for a lot of the guys on these cards. But these cards, I think, because there's proven pathways to the very top, because they put on such great shows, because the matchmaking is good, the audience is good, people want to get on these shows. And just before we get into them here again, I had a question on one of my Q&As maybe a year ago or something, like, and I think the way it was worded was like, is this going to affect Cage Warriors? But and what I mean by it is like the I suppose, wholesale nature of the amount of cards that are going on with European MMA talent at the moment. And like, would the talent be stretched too thin and the cards have problems because of that? And it hasn't really worked out that way at all. I think a couple of the reasons why that hasn't happened are, I think, new regions have been opened up. So obviously for Cage Warriors, it was mostly the UK and Ireland for a long time, but obviously they've opened up Italy, and a lot of good fighters coming from Italy, a lot of good fighters coming across from France as well, fighting in Cage Warriors. And look what, for KSW, it's been obviously Poland and like the likes of Parnas and other people from France and other places as well. And in Oktagon are going for the Czech Republic, but also signing guys from other parts of the world, you know, as we'll talk about here in the main event in a second. But also, and just to add to that as well, I think it's actually helping a lot of these promotions that we saw Sam Creasy a few weeks ago, who was obviously a Cage Warrior stalwart. He's gone to Oktagon. We've seen lads who are fighting in Oktagon fighting on Cage Warriors, guys who are fighting in KSW fighting in Cage Warriors. We saw this story as well. If you haven't heard this story about Dominic Humberger, it's one of the most interesting stories we've had in MMA in a long time. I had Sean Denny over on the Severe MMA podcast premium talking about it, but just a quick version of it, I suppose. So KSW ran their show on Friday night. Oktagon had the show on a Saturday night. And Dominic Humberger is a Czech soldier, so he's a big star there, I suppose, and he fought on KSW, has been fighting in KSW for a while, won the performance of the night, and the next day showed up on Oktagon saying he's signing with them, saying like his contract is up with KSW, he's signing with them, which was a big coup for Oktagon, but also a big kind of kick up the arse. And apparently there's a lot of controversy about that from KSW, so much so that KSW actually have taken the bonus and donated to an animal shelter. Now, that was the last I heard. Maybe things have changed since that, but there was a little bit of controversy over that as well. But I'll tell you what, there's no quarter being asked or given in all of this malarkey. So very, very interesting times, and we will get into these cards here. But let's not forget as we watch these cards and as we go into the year how important some of these cards are, and I suppose who will come out on top in all of this. So right, let's start with Oktagon first of all, and we'll jump back and forth between these cards. But I think the fight of the weekend is in these promotions is undoubtedly Lazar Todev against Will Fleury. You call me a little bit biased, but because obviously Will is from Ireland and all, and I've obviously interviewed him a good few times and everything like that. But I think it's fair. I think a lot of people will probably agree. Like, you have Todev, we'll talk about him in a second, who's a very, very talented guy at heavyweight, fighting for the heavyweight title here. Is Will Fleury, who is the light heavyweight champion, formerly at middleweight, who's only just come in to Oktagon, and has just become a star for them really over the last while. Now, I talked about this in the top 5 fights for March, so I'll get more into the fight itself and the X's and O's of it maybe. But if you missed that show, just like the story of Will Fleury over the last couple of years has been so interesting. Obviously, he was in Bellator for the most part of his, I suppose, you could call it the start of his career. In his 5th fight was in Bellator, so he had a good few fights there, had some good wins, fought Justin Moore, Antonio Jones, Sean Taylor, and a few more. Ended up losing to Norbert Navigny, got another fight. That was the Justin Moore fight. He won that. Then fought Madrik Romanowski during the pandemic, lost that, and went on and got back and won a fight against Ken Kopinen. And then that was when kind of the bubble burst a little bit on the Bellator European series, and he had to get fights where he could get him over the next while, but he ended up getting some really, really, really good wins. Beat Tarek Sullivan, beat Antonio Salamoni, and the talk was at that stage, I think he was, what was he in his career? He was something like 11-3 or something like that. Pretty good record. the domination that he put on to Salamone and Sullivan first. It was the Sullivan fight was the last one over in UAE Warriors, was just fantastic, and a lot of people thought that he was going to sign for the UFC. Didn't end up happening. He was given the opportunity in the PFL for the light heavyweight tournament, and he went in and he took it. And obviously, he was one of the 7 or 8 lads that ended up failing the drugs test, as did his opponent Christoph Jocko. With the Bellator merger and all, he didn't end up getting re-signed. And like, I spoke to Will, and like, I'll be speaking to him again hopefully in the next couple of days, and he spoke about how he thought about retirement, and he thought about this being it, like, and this was in 2023, so not too long ago, and Will is 35 years of age now, so it's a tough decision to make, but he made the decision to go to Oktagon. They reached out to get him, and what a run he has had at Oktagon. It feels like Will is at a stage where, like, maybe I could get 1 or 2 more and that could be the end of my career, to now, like, this being by far the best part of his career. And you're thinking at 35 years of age, like, could he get another 4 or 5 years out of it the way it's going in Oktagon? Like, goes in there and beats Daniel Score the way he did beat him, knocks out Pavel Langer in a fashion that I haven't seen from Will Fleury before, and then just decimated Carlos Vimola over 5 rounds in a fashion that you very, very, you don't see very often against a guy like Vimola at light heavyweight, with the pace and the amount of shots that Will Fleury landed in that fight. You don't see that very often. So this is a magnificent part of his career, and like, all down to taking risks, I suppose, and it's another risk again by going up to heavyweight to fight Lazar Todev. Todev, I'll talk more about his ability, and we'll get to that, because this guy is very, very, very good. He's bounced around again to different places. He's fought in Octagon, out of Octagon. He's fought over an M1, and he's fought in Brave and things like that. And, he's fought from the very start of his career, fought some good guys. But you look at his record and you think it's 11-6. But in his first, how many was it? 7 fights. He lost 5 fights. So he's only lost 1 fight in the last 9, so this guy's on a great run at the moment. And let's get to the fighting, the style itself. So Todev, from watching him, like, he has a submission or 2 in his record, and he's the bits and pieces where he goes to the ground, he doesn't look completely out of his depth, but he is a striker, and he is your there's someone coming up later on who I'm going to talk about being a very typical middle of the road is wrong, but how would you put it? Cookie cutter fighter. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. No, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Todev is the exact opposite of that as a heavyweight. Right? This guy comes in, low hands, fighting off the back foot, countering, athletic style, something you never see from a heavyweight. And when I say never see, like, I don't know another heavyweight like this. I haven't seen another heavyweight. Like, even say the likes of a Cyril Gann or a John Jones or a Francis Ngannou, I'm not comparing him to anything, but they don't fight in a similar, like, athletic way to him. Now, there's a couple of things that can achieve, right? That can achieve a really tough fight for an opponent because of your ability to land strikes or where you can land them. It can also get you very tired, I would say. Like, you look at a lot of his fights, he's 2-5 in decisions. He did go 5 rounds a couple of fights ago against Hatev Mayel. Didn't end up winning that. So I think that style, especially against a guy like Will Fleury, which we'll get to here in a second, could be tough, but he's very, very dangerous on the feet, and is a guy that a lot of heavyweights wouldn't have seen before, a style that a lot of heavyweights wouldn't have seen before. Issue is, in this fight, Will's fought Norbert Navinyi, like, he's like Todev, except 15 times better in terms of his ability to fight in that manner. And no offense to Todev at all, I think that's how highly I think of Norbert Navinyi Jr., but if you fought a middleweight or light heavyweight to a certain extent, you're going to have seen styles like this, especially, I think, Will Fleury trained in Ireland as well. A lot of the stylists are kind of back foot counter strikers. You can probably guess why. So I think that's actually a real plus point for Will Fleury, and something Todev is, I think, going to have to adjust to. The other side of it then is like Will push that 5-round pace. He will, excuse the pun, go non-stop. The only issue I would see for him is the heavyweight, getting the weight on for heavyweight. He talked about it, and we looked at the drugs test, and now we know about that, getting from middleweight to light heavyweight. It's not the longest notice in the world at getting to heavyweight. So how much weight is he actually going to have to put on to get there? Will he be able to carry it? Like, he looks very big at light heavyweight. Doesn't look anything slow or anything like that. There's no shred of doubt about that. But how is the heavyweight weight going to work for him? But still in all, I think the style, the way Will fights, where he's landing big shots now, pushing forward, being defensively better, using that wrestling is going to be real tough for Todev. And I think Will's last, not the Vola fight, but the fight before that against Langer, I thought Langer is Langer is actually similar enough striker at times to Todev, maybe changes up a little bit more than Todev, but fights off the back foot an awful lot. And I think that fight will show that he really isn't open to strikes from guys like that, and was able to close the distance against guys like that. And I think that makes him a real favourite here against Todev. But Todev is always one shot away from changing everything. And I think he will very much try to set up Will to land those shots, whereas Will will be putting that pace on, trying to push him back, trying to get that either the big shot, pushing him against the cage, or the big takedown against the cage, I'd say. So a fascinating fight, very, very interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. Right, let's jump over to KSW next. Let's talk about the main event there. Piotr Kuberski against Tommy Romanowski. Two lads who have been around for a good long while now. Romanowski is this will be his 29th fight, and it'll be the 17th fight of Kuberski's career. Kuberski, I mentioned, is one of these lads who's been in a lot of different promotions as well. FEN, obviously here in KSW, as well, UAE Warriors and other places. He hasn't lost a fight. I mentioned he's 15-1. He hasn't lost a fight since 2019, so he's on an unbelievable run now. Beating the likes of Damian Janakovsky, Michel Materla, Bartosz Lesko, we'll talk more about here in a second. And then against Romanowski, who's still only 36. It feels like he's been around for an awful long time. He's lost a couple in a row, lost to Janakovsky and Palak, but, some of the wins before that were really, really good. Beat Jan Sardu, with a great win there recently. Radoslav Pokuski and many more as well. Been in there with Patrick Kinsel, didn't end up winning that fight, but he has some high-level experience, I suppose. And, I mentioned kind of your normal fighter before. I suppose that you would say that about Kuberski. He trains out of Ankos over in Poznan. Real power in his hands with 13 knockouts. But when I say he's a normal fighter, he's 13 knockouts and 15 wins. That's not so normal, I suppose. But the way he fights, it's your straight up jab, 1-2, starts quick, comes out of the cage, good cardio. Like, reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if this is the right way of putting it, but maybe Leon Edwards with hands, if you want to put it that way, with power, like in a way, in the striking realm, a little bit, right? Is there anyone who'd be a better example? Maybe maybe a Dos Anjos would be the good example, or early in his career, and obviously, Dos Anjos is southpaw and everything like that. But, whereas Romanowski, the other side of it then, he's kind of the guy, whereas Kuberski's the guy that expected to do it. Romanowski is the underdog. He's, I was talking to Sean Denny about him before, and shout out to Sean Denny as always for help with these guys, but, has a background in BJJ, but doesn't really use it at all. Loves the boxing and his big power. And, to be fair, if you look at the records, not many people can deal with that power. He's 7 knockouts in his career, knocked out some very, very good guys down through the years. But you have to be honest here, and you have to look at this, like, if this is going to be a striking matchup, Kuberski is probably going to win, and I just think that power is going to be too much. I think the technique, the defensive ability as well, like if Romanowski is not going to wrestle with him, it's hard to see a way around that, to be honest. So, look, this one, I don't know where the betting odds out yet for, and I'll try to pull them up here and see, but I would be surprised if Kuberski wasn't a fairly sizable favor for this one. I'm just looking at, he's minus 450, so that makes a whole lot of sense. And actually, look on the other side of it, Will Fleury is minus 175. Again, I think that line is just about right. So the lines for these cards are getting better and better all the time. But that's an interesting fight. But I think Romanowski is going to have to fight in a way which he doesn't really like to fight, and I suppose we'll see how that goes. Right, last but not least, let's jump over to the Cage Warriors main event. As I said, we'll mention a couple of other fights here. Liam Gittins, the Sheehan Show Fighter of the Year in 2023, I believe it was. What a year he had. Obviously holds the bantamweight title right about now. Is going up against Alessandro Giordano, who won his last 3 fights in a row, one of which was the former champion, Michele Martignoni. He's been in there and lost to Nathan Fletcher before that, who's in the UFC at the moment. So he's some good guys in his ledger. Only 12 fights into his career. Okay, 9-3, but never been finished. All went to a decision. And this is, look, it's an interesting fight because watching back some of Giordano today, he's a real hitter. His striking is very much on point, and you look at a guy like that and you think he always has a chance. He always has a chance against, say, a guy like Gittins, who, Gittins is a fairly simple game again, but a damn effective one. He'll throw his strikes coming forward, he'll look for his takedowns, he'll get on top, he'll beat you there, he'll submit you, he'll knock you out, he'll decision you, he'll do whatever it takes to win. And he's won 6 fights in a row against some really good guys. Reese McHugh and Roberto Hernandez last time out, and he had his knockbacks as well in his career, losing to Kingsley Crawford and Gerardo Fanny and Jonas Magard as well, but he always kind of stuck in there and became the fighter he is today, I suppose. And this matchup, I think, do you know what? It favors him and it doesn't, in a way. Like, to beat a guy at this level like Liam Gittins, you almost need a skill set like Giordano, where you're all action, big strikes, big power. And, you look at Giordano's record as well. He has a really good finishing rate. 6 finishes in 9 wins. 5 knockouts. It's pretty good. That is pretty good. And he's gonna have to land those big shots on Gittins. I really do think he is gonna have to land those big shots on Gittins, because Gittins will get inside. He will take him down. Close-up fighters, well, Gittins is so good in that area. I think Giordano has to make him pay. I think the biggest issue for Giordano is, as I said, all his fights that he's lost have been decisions. Like Gittins doesn't have as many decisions as you think. Like, Gittins has 10 finishes and 13 wins as well, which is an awful lot for a guy the way he fights, but he breaks lads down. And I'll move on to some of the other fights after this, but the biggest issue that I thought with Giordano is that I think a guy like Gittins, and this is 5 rounds as well, if I'm not mistaken, he's only ever fought, obviously, the 3 rounds. If Gittins can take him the 5 rounds, I think he's going to struggle badly, because his style, you almost have to fight at a higher clip. And if he doesn't, I think it takes something away and plays into Gittins' hands. I think he almost has to fight at that higher clip. As I said, there is ways for Giordano to win. Like, there's no doubt about that. I do think there is ways for him to win. But I think there's probably a few more ways for Gittins to win, if you want to put it like that. So a very, very interesting fight there. Right, let's touch on a couple of the other fights. Like, obviously, the other big fight, I suppose, is the middleweight fight on Cage Warriors between Dario Belandi and Naglius Kanisauskas. Belandi has looked immense over the last while. 8-1 now. Beat Robin Roos last time out, who's a very, very good striker, and beat Mick Stanton before that. Anyone who watched Oktagon a couple of weeks ago will know how good Mick Stanton is. You know, his only loss to date is Will Curry, and you know, his opponent is coming in from Lithuania. He has a couple of wins in Cage Warriors. They fought before, went to decision at Cage Warriors 158, but you know, he's a finisher. You know, 8 wins all by finish. And I think if you go back to the first fight and you look at the way you know, Dario Belandi got it won, I think got it done in 2023. I think he'd probably get it done in a similar way this time. The only thing I would say is I think Belandi has improved an awful lot. He was caught, you know, he was calling for the UFC after the last fight, and I believe he probably should have got that call. And I think if he wins this, I think he probably will. Now, he's won, I said, the last 3 fights, including the first fight between these two, were all decisions. So maybe he's thinking, right, I need to get the finish here. But like, Belandi's hands are so good. His all-round ability is so good. Like Mick Stanton, you know the way Mick Stanton fights, for him to get through that fight is going to be something special. So the prediction for this, I know we'll talk more when the betting show comes on, I think. But I think Belandi will might just get a finish here, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Some of the other fights, just and we'll finish up Cage Warriors here. So one of the top prospects I think in the world is Michele Pejani. I'm a massive fan of his, and he's coming back here obviously after losing to the newly signed UFC star Mason Jones in his last fight. What a fight that was to make! Unbelievable fight. And he is fighting against Costi Intellis, who I predicted would beat Simone Patrizzi last time out, and he did. He finished him early, and he has big power. This is an unbelievable fight. This is a real fight against two guys that can hit, and you never know for a guy like Pejani. Like he kind of threw away that Mason Jones fight a little bit. He was up early and doing really well, and experience told. How does a guy like that so young in his career bounce back? I suppose we'll see. We will see. So that's definitely one to look forward to. I think some of the other fights, they're massive fight for Patrizzi. As I said, he just lost against Adam Shelley, who's 5-4 now. Like Adam Shelley was, you know, touted, and himself and his brother touted to be two really, really top fighters, but it's not gone to the script for him so far. So going over to enemy territory there, a very, very big fight for him. And then Dylan Hazan against Michelangelo Lupoli. You know, people probably would have been talking about that as a title fight not too long ago. So, like, this is a great card, to be honest. Aiden Lee as well is on it against a newcomer who's 6-0. Very, very interesting. Very interesting altogether. KSW then. KSW, I think, is probably not the strongest of these 3 cards, but you could argue it has the best undercard fight of them all, with Magic Rosinski against Bartosz Leszko. This is a great fight. I mentioned a minute ago, Will Fleury took a fight during the pandemic and lost. And who did he lose to? He lost to Magic Rosinski, and that's this guy. And you know, he fought in Bellator, fought against Yashimurdov and Karen Moore. Like, he ended up losing those couple of fights, but this guy is really, really good. Won his last fight in KSW, and now he's fighting Leszko, you know, who at 28 years of age beat Dominic Humberger, the aforementioned earlier on. You know, we're probably talking about title shots pretty soon after this. Like, Leszko is, you know, big and strong with a big long jab, fast counters, gangly, but it worked for him. And then Rosinski is just your prototypical big light heavyweight, strong, good jab, good power. You know, he's only 2 knockouts in his career. He probably should have some more, but when he gets the fight to the ground, you know, the array of submissions he has, you know, his arm bars, guillotines, triangles, von Flews. That tells you all you need to know about him. This is a great fight. A really, really great fight. And honestly, I don't know who wins this. Let me see if there's betting up for this fight. There is. And Rosinski's a -250 favorite. Interesting. I I don't know about that one. I don't know, but I probably would have him just about as a favorite, but it seems a tad big to me. So very, very interesting fight there in the light heavyweight division. Roman Skamanski's also on this card. And there's a lot of kind of newcomers as well. Bart Kopera as well, been around for a while. He's fighting Simon Korashek as well in that card. So then the Octagon card is really going. Christian Jungwirth is supposed to be on the card. I believe he just got injured in the last couple of days. So that's a big pity and a big blow to this card. One of the standout fights on this is Dennis Frimpong against Robin Frank. So Dennis Frimpong, if people don't know, he is the guy that fought Paddy Pimblett in the gym a couple of weeks ago, if people remember that. And the guy he's fighting, Robin Frank, is 5-0. And if you look up Robin Frank against Diego Santos, he got a 15-second head kick knockout in his last fight. This guy looks a beast, an absolute beast. Dennis is not a bad fighter. He's been in there with a few bums over the last while, and that's all you could call one or two of his opponents. Lost to George Staines, but I think a lot of people will, and has won 3 since that. It'll be an interesting fight. I think if Dennis wins this, it really changes his career. And he'll prove a lot if he was to win this. But Robin Frank this guy is an absolute beast and a tough enough fight. The betting lines are very, very close as well, so we'll have a closer look at that. But a top-level fight as well on this card. Mohamed Muradov against Jailton Leatherback. Like, Jailton has been in, some big organizations and big fights over the last while, and you could say the same for Muradov. Obviously, he's been in the UFC, beat Brian Barberena, been in there with Kao Bahalio, has wins over the likes of Trevor Smith and other people as well, and a big finisher as well, 20 finishes in his career, whereas Leatherback, this is his 51st fight, and he's been, fighting since God was a boy. He's won the last 6 in a row now, fighting kind of around the organizations. 3 of them are in Brave since he left the PFL. Fought Clay Collard and Haush Maffeo over there, as well as a few others. He's been in there with Dricus du Plessis as well, ended up losing that fight. But, this again, a Cage Warriors veteran, a guy who's seen and done it all. So a very, very interesting fight over there as well. Lucas Copera and Alan Omer. I wonder if the two Caperas related. I wonder that, but that's an interesting fight too. Lots of fun stuff here across Octagon, across KSW, and across Cage Warriors, and we will have you covered here on Sherdog.com with it all. All right, everybody, that's it for me. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.